Yeah, there was some debate about like how crazy this title is. So you get to see. We'll see if we have it unfold. So we are here for the new farming methods in the epistemological wasteland of application security. I'll try to use the word epistemological at least a few more times, and then we'll reveal. Yeah, we'll get to what it means as we go through. If you're initiated, you can get the slides at bit.ly/RDO-farming, just to kind of keep up with the farming theme there. And if you want to grab the slides, and then I'll do the summary up front too. So if you're like, dude, it's been a long conference, and I just want to like check some email or whatever, like we're going to hook you up with that time if you want, or we'll see. I work at Signal Sciences. I'm an engineer over there, and I live here in Austin. I'm working on a book, the Hands-On Gauntlet book. I help organize DevOps Days here in Austin, and I also help organize LASCON. And I've been involved in application security and DevOps and operations and engineering for, I don't know, for a while. I'll do two slides, well, one serious slide, and then we'll see for Signal Sciences. But what is Signal Sciences? We're doing application security, monitoring, telemetry, trying to get that sort of data. But we're also putting defense in place as well. We're making it so it's application security that everybody can use, and it's not like this thing that you got to like hire people's staff to like watch the thing as we've done in the past. And it's I like to think of it as a way that DevOps really wants to go fast. This helps security say, yeah, you can go fast, like, and we can hang with that. And like I think that's it starts to help you. It's not a complete answer to the problem, but it starts to approach that problem. But because Pete Cheslock is here, I thought we would just simplify even more exactly what we do. We make it like this. And I don't know, you would think like people writing unicorns would be like a weird thing. Oh no, like the internet is full of unicorn pictures. And in fact, you can find even Batman himself writing a unicorn. So in essence, I guess the video's on, so I don't know. But Signal Sciences makes you like Batman writing a unicorn of awesome. So, okay, and also, I mentioned, if you're, maybe you're watching the video, or maybe you're just like, it's been a long day. Maybe you're like, I was debating going to another conference. You will know now at the end of this slide whether you should stay here or go, or keep watching or whatever. So, software development is a constant. So I'm going to give you the summary of the whole thing. Development and software development is a constant experiment in knowing anything. In application security, we abdicated our runtime responsibility and our development responsibility through incoherent philosophical approaches, and we fostered silo thinking. Kind of ouch, it hurts, right? Okay, there's a clap. All right, like-minded souls in the room. Okay. Good. Security now is where ops was 7 years ago. I used to say security now is where ops was 5 years ago, and then like time just keeps clicking by, and so we're where they are 7 years ago. We'll see. Let's not make it to 9. Ops found a path to change through DevOps. Security can make that change too. And then I think there's a couple key ways where we can add value, but like 3 specifically where security can add value. I think we can add a tremendous value at development time, deploy time, and at the runtime operational layer. And there's a couple practices that we'll review as well that I'm also going to be talking about. I believe that we should practice like bad behavior development. We should weaponize our pipelines for continuous delivery or continuous integration or whatever. We need to have some sort of application security, monitoring, telemetry, whatever you want to call it. Like we need something to know what's going on runtime in our application in the state to actually give us some information there. You should also take some looks at things like continuous hardening and auditing, especially with all the DevOps groups. Maybe you find yourself a little less AppSec, but a little more InfoSec. I think that one's really helpful for that in integrating DevOps groups that way. And have an SBOM, which is software bill of materials, but it's way better to just say SBOM, right? So, okay. Well, where do we come from, and really like how do we know anything in application security, and like what's our roots and how did we get here? And I'll just sort of say like, hey, we actually really have no idea how we get here, but we'll actually prove it out in some overarching arcs of software development. And when we talk about it, like, what does epistemology mean? Epistemology is the study of how you actually know anything. Like, how do we know anything in software development? And this is kind of, and I think that's the sort of the problem statement that I want to tackle or think about. And we're just going to walk through a journey of like where we've gone throughout the, I don't know, we'll say like the last 20 years, but it's also like interpreted through me. So like, it's not like, it's just like what I think has happened and how I've sort of understood it. And I've been filling in the blanks as I go, and as I get older and I read other stuff and I learn stuff. So, but I think we have this part of us that makes us just innately, because of who we are and kind of our human nature, like we want to optimize for what we perceive as the probable events that are going to occur, right? And in software we have unit testing, we have integration testing, we have all these things that really like look like happy path engineering, right? It's like, this is the flow that people will take through the software, and this is whenever 50 of those people want to make that flow at the same time, and we just sort of have like these ideal states. We maybe like create storyboarded users, and we give them names and personas and all that stuff. Very normal, very, very good idea. But then we also have this other tendency where we like to optimize for like all possible scenarios, right? And which you really can't do, but you still are left without what you perceive, but you end up doing a lot of over-engineering. You start like writing that scaling algorithm that took you a week to write, but then it turns out your company like didn't make it, or you got bought, or you got sold, or whatever, right? And it's like, and it never was useful. Or Amazon released a new thing, and like now they automatically do it for you, and it's like you completely wasted your time, right? It's because we like that, and I think engineering like that speaks to like who we are as makers, as builders. We're saying like, oh, I want to do all this stuff, right? And but there's really too much. There's too much for us to choose from in the land of the possible, and so we're still left to that whole thing. We just perceive what the probable things are going to happen, and even if we're like really like, well, I don't know. How you have those people on your team that's like they're the real like overthinkers, and then you have some people that are like blissfully ignorant of like all people will love our software, right? So you can have both paths, but in the middle, usually put those people on the same team, and then out comes your software. But how do we really even know like what we're creating in the first place? And I think that's the problem, and that's what we're trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say here is the epistemological problem of software development. And and as part of this, like we gather our own rhetoric and our ideas, and sometimes data too, to support our theories. But we like to have that. We like to move forward in all those areas, and sometimes we do it through arguments, or we big Excel spreadsheets or whatever. But let's walk through our like 3 major arcs that are currently going on in software development, and like how this sort of plays together, and how we can start thinking about how security can kind of get involved in that. I think it's important for us to also realize, where did software development come from? And this is some of the stuff that I've just been learning about recently. But we started out as looking around like, oh, we're writing this stuff. What should we do? Let's look for another discipline. Let's try like who in here, whose parents are working on software engineering, or even in like a technical type state, like technical work. Okay, 1, 2, right? It's like we are like basically more or less like the first generation of people like working on this stuff. So like we're like looking for a model, actively trying to figure out what to do. And in the 80s and the 90s, it was like a push to do like the big waterfall method, and a lot of that comes from its roots in civil engineering, where you're going to pour this road. If you pour the concrete, it's like $5 million. Like you better be, you need to do like 6 months of like environmental studies and all the things that are required legally and all that stuff to make that happen. Turns out like civil engineering is like a horrible analogy for software, because like writing lines of code has nothing to do with like pouring concrete, right? You like the switching cost for making that is like super low, right? It's a person typing on a keyboard. But because the way we've architected our waterfall, so that like the person types at the keyboard, months go by, then the thing goes deployed. Like now the business now has to calculate all that as a cost and because you made that whole feedback loop in the cycle to actually get that in runtime, like so long, you've actually kind of created the civil engineering problem for yourself when you didn't really have to, right? Does that make sense? Does that resonate with everybody? Like, do you feel like that's good, or you're like, that's stupid? If you feel like it's stupid, feel free to like, or you know, whatever, but you feel free to like say something. Pete, you have something to say, I'm sure. Thanks. Okay, good. All right. All right, so let's go through. I'm going to talk about Agile first. And I'm still holding out. I'll probably like change these some of these slides and photos, but I really like these because this is a shout out to SkyMall. You know, all these products are SkyMall products that are, you know, we don't have SkyMall anymore. So this is what we can now just look back and wonder why didn't we buy these things while they're available to us. So first arc, Agile, and Agile did a really smart thing. They're like, great, we're just going to like completely sidestep the problem of having to know anything because we have no idea what we're building. And instead, like, we're going to go with this whole new approach of like, just ship it. Like, it's going to get out the door, and we're going to get in front of customers or managers or whoever. We start writing things. Behavior-driven development came through the Agile stuff, which behavior-driven development is really Agile plus feedback loops, and codified that, which is really cool. And Dan North, he has this really great quote, and in the end it's like, what are we really trying to do? And Agile really typified this, is like, we're trying to build software that runs and works and tested, but really in the end we wanted like software that matters, like, and that's what we want to fulfill. Agile taught us that we wanted to amplify that feedback loop and get some good sleep, I guess, and then make sure that like we're showing that, you know, our in-state product, you know, weekly or whatever. And when Agile came out, like, that was transformational, right? It was like, oh, really? I should like give, you know, examples of like what I'm working on, not like 9 months into the dev cycle, but I should do it like every Wednesday or, you know, every Friday or whatever. And in the end, we have to realize that rapid iterations really takes over the job of like having to have like a complete, you know, thought out wide plan, and instead, you know, iterate quickly. And we can't forget that Agile is our guiding light. That's actually at my house. I don't know about y'all. Not really. Actually, I have some friends that just bought the Illuma Bowl. Has anybody heard of the Illuma Bowl? I don't mean to derail us, but apparently it's an LED thing you can put in the same idea, but instead of being on the toilet seat, it's actually inside the bowl. And anyways, my buddy installed one, and his wife hollers out to him, Matt, oh, I can't believe it's on video. Like, Matt, there's a disco party. Oh, it has light changing mode. She's like, there's a disco party going on in the toilet, you know. It's like turn this off now. And so it was like a big panic, you know. It's like 2 in the morning. So yeah, so buy that, have fun with your significant other, and yeah, it's a good idea. But okay, let's the world has changed since Agile has come out, right? We don't sell CDs anymore. We have software as a service, and really we have a complete change. Like, everything has changed in the last 15 years. We've changed the way we deliver stuff, the repetition and the cadence of what we've done. So the way we distribute our software, even the revenue models have completely shifted, and that leads us to DevOps. And the ink came off only a couple days later. It was really worth it. And you know, I'm glad you guys laughed at that, because a lot of times, like, I show that and they're like, I guess that dude really wrote DevOps on his hands, you know. And it's like, man, okay, that's where I fall, you know. Actually, I was impressed that somebody did that and posted it on the internet. You're like, you wouldn't think you'd be able to find that, but I guess that's what the internet's good for: unicorns and people scribbling on their knuckles. So DevOps is the application of the Agile methodology to system administration. That's like, boom, that's the Practice of Cloud System Administration book by Tom Limoncelli. So there you go. That's like the current Bible of DevOps right now. This is also might be how you could easily interpret DevOps. And you could just call it like Agile infrastructure, which is the, I don't know if you're familiar with the history of DevOps, but at Velocity, I believe it was in 2009, Patrick Dubois, the guy who coined the term DevOps and like started DevOps Days, and is really like foundational and kind of we call him the Godfather lovingly in the DevOps community. And I guess, who proposed that? Was that, somebody proposed a session on like, hey, I want to talk about agile infrastructure. And it was like this open birds of the feather type thing at Velocity. And Patrick showed up, but like nobody else showed up. Oh, it's Andrew Schaefer, right? And Andrew Schaefer didn't show up, and there was like this whole thing. And they eventually met each other, and they're like, okay, we should do this thing. And they ended up having making DevOps a thing. So I thought that was cool. This is a slide that a lot of people point to as like a pivotal moment in the history of DevOps, if you kind of more from a security standpoint. But this is whenever John Allspaw and Paul Hammond at Velocity, same conference, same time, said, hey, we do 10 deploys a day. And everybody in the room was just like, I cannot believe that. That is crazy. You know, like that's back when everybody was doing like 3-month releases or 6-month releases. And this whole like multiple deploys a day was crazy. But we started learning like, oh, like there's this whole thing called lean. And if you have less work in progress and less it like reduces technical debt. And then you get people using it, and developers are actually happier because they get to see people using it, and they can actually build, iterate features slowly or quickly, but they don't have to like release so much big bang stuff to see what actually has traction or not. And then you allow people to do testing. Has a great side effect of happy developers. This is another like slide that people talk to whenever they think about DevOps. Is like dev was on one side, and they had one set of demands, and operations had another set of demands, and they didn't align. And then we kind of have the current state of like, or the way that like how is always typified is like, whatever, not my problem, and we realized that was kind of like key. And I know it sounds simple, it sounds easy to us now, but at the time, remember, like we were struggling with like, how do we kind of align these two groups that have been walled off from each other? They're disparately arranged, and they're inadequately staffed, right? And unfairly proportionally staffed. So you usually have like, I don't know, 10, 20 developers to like one operations person or one sysadmin or something like that. That ratio, more or less holds true. And it's an order of magnitude thing, depending on like what kind of project you are or whatever. But like, it's easy to see like the 10 are going to have a flow problem with the 1, right? You may not, and the 1 can't really do the work that's needed to like make the 10's job easier or kind of be a part of the team, because like they got 10 or 20 people, trying to make stuff happen. So it's like just not a very equitable staffing model there. So we kind of see this as a breakthrough. Like it joined people around a common problem. And we focus a lot in DevOps world about culture. We talk about how we can succeed in the enterprise. And this is Patrick. I mentioned Patrick earlier. He's the guy who is the godfather of DevOps, but which he would probably hate that I would say that publicly. So quote away. But he's reminding us like the only problem that we have like to make DevOps work is culture. Like that's it, period. And that's what we need to really focus on. And I still struggle with that. Like, what does that look like? Because it's like, sometimes you're just stuck with like a bunch of people that are like not fun to work with, and yeah, you can just be like, well, go get another job. But like, you don't want to just say like, go get another job, because that's like not a really transformational thing to do. And it sort of struck me. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she really loves the moon. And I like to think like our house now has like a moon culture. And like way less spiritual than it sounds, but it's like it's full moon or whatever, and she's just like really excited about it. It's like, Dad, I see the moon, and I realized at one point, like I now physically get excited about seeing the moon. I'm like, sweet, the moon is out. Like I'm gonna talk to Lydia about it. I tell my wife about it, and I'm like, hey, it's like really cool. Like the moon's like just a little bit, or oh, it's a full moon tonight, or whatever, right? When the big moon thing the other day, like got her out of the bed and like, oh, let's go check it out, right? And it was cool, but it started changing like the way that we talk about things in our family. It was like mutual understanding. We had a new shared language. We had shared views on what was important to us. I downloaded an app on my phone, and I'm like, oh, like it's a waning crescent moon, honey. It's like I could predict the moon, so it's like it's even better, right? It's like what you want to do with your bosses with like traffic or any type of like metrics that you're presenting. And so, I think like for us to think about culture, like we need to make sure like we're aligning to the right vision, to the right end state, and when you start making these effects, like these are the type of things, whenever you affect this area, that's when you know you're winning. It's not like the ping pong table or the beer whatever, or like free t-shirts or whatever. Like all that stuff like can happen organically, can happen from the top down, but it's whenever you start realigning everybody in the business kind of in this direction, like that's when you start seeing the cultural transformation. So I can't help with that, and I don't want to like talk too much about culture through this deck, but like I think that like go through this list and think about like where you at, where you sit, and how can you make a difference kind of in your organization in this area. So find the moon in your organization and help other people see it too. I think that we also look at DevOps as a way. Some people look at it as like it was this thing that was coming. Some people are like it is inevitable because the way that we've organized our economies, you have to do this to survive and to win. We're seeing a lot of DevOps organizations that are outperforming their peers by huge numbers. The DevOps survey, State of the Union. Let's see. Okay. High-performing IT organizations experience 60 times fewer failures, recover from their failure 168 times faster, and they also deploy 30 times more frequently with 200x shorter lead times. So like, it's really cool. It's like, it's not 10% better. It's not like 30% better. It's like, it's orders of magnitude better to do this stuff. It's because you can see how entrenched we are in like the old way, and just like changing the way we view the world, like realigning that culture is really worth it. Cool thing about this survey is that it's been verified by people that do that sort of thing, and like it is like not just one of those we put a little widget on our website and 50 people voted and now we have like a data. It's like been validated. I know it's been part of like PhD research, and Nicole Forgeson is like doing great work on that, and it's not like, I don't know if it's like completely irrefutable, but like it is very strong, and it's stronger than any of the stuff that like the IT has traditionally looked at for surveys, like understand like performance and value and stuff like that. I'd hate to talk about DevOps without talking about culture, automation, measurement, sharing. John Willis and Damon Edwards coined this. It's known as CAMS. And we need to be affecting all these things. We sometimes like focus on the automation part or the measurement part, but we need to be equally good about sharing and the culture of it. And it's an inclusive type thing. It's not something where it's like, oh, we're the DevOps, we're the DevOps and we're the DevOps team, and you guys, suck it, right? It's DevOps is not meant to be that way. And I think that to quote Patrick again, it's we often see it as a cultural. We don't see it as a cultural problem. We always see it as like a tool problem. It's like, if I could just get those guys using Chef/Docker/whatever new thing, we would be way better. Well, like that's not really true. What's really true is you need to like look at the cultural part, and then the tools can like fit in where they fit in. And some people would argue this is not another arc, but it's just a continuation of DevOps. But whatever, I got to choose the arcs just arbitrarily, so there you go. But I think continuous delivery has made a huge impact in our world. And there's this great little book by Jez Humble, and that talks about how continuous delivery is so foundational and so important. And I remember him saying something like, when I wrote it, I thought like maybe like 1,000 people or 500 people would read this book and find it useful, but like lots of people are starting to uptake this and read this, and he's like, it's just kind of like a boring book on continuous delivery, but it's really helpful. I had a chance to really dive in it one time when I was between jobs, and I just read through it, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. It's very, I would make a high recommendation to check out this book, and you can just pull out the parts maybe that would be useful for you, because it is kind of a large book, but it'll definitely help you. But the summary of it is like, you need a delivery pipeline of some sort. You need to help make it real easy for people to move code from development all the way to production. Your goal ends up being have a small batch size, right? So like I check in one line of code, and it's easy to make that change all the way out to production in minutes, not hours or not days. And a lot of security people will object, like they'll say, oh wait, we got to have like separation of duties on all that, and we have like PCI 632 or whatever that is, 634, where you got to have developers and production being separate. But I would say the separation of duties is considered harmful, and it's probably like an anti-pattern. You need it for some stuff. I actually don't think you need it for PCI. If you read that third column in the PCI guidance, I'm just like pre-answering that question. But it's like, if you read that third column, it says like, developers should not have root account on prod. Okay, well bang, like we can do that. I'm not saying you give people root. I'm saying you give people a button. And that whole requirement is all about, it's really focused on developers making bad configuration choices in a production environment. Well, like no one in this in a pipeline makes a configuration change. The system makes the change, right? You check it into the system deploys it out. You have a dev stage test, whatever, however you want to architect that. But it's not humans doing things, and you can say, yeah, developers have zero access to production, and your PCI assessment is going to be like, okay, great, you know, and it's like, but they do get to push a button on a thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, people are allowed to push buttons, you know, so I would challenge you on that and read that guidance, and it's like super clear about like what they're really trying to get. It's that they don't want escalated access on production by just anybody in the company, just to the limited people that are in scope for the PCI audit. So I would say give developers the power to deploy. This gives you the benefit of reducing code latency, increasing code velocity. Right, so I've walked us through like these three arcs. We talked a little about civil engineering, and you're like, okay, like where are we going with this? Well, hopefully, because we're at LASCON, our security conference, you see, like, I believe, and I said earlier, like, security is behind. Like, we are the next arc. Like, it needs to be the security, the arc that kind of plays ball with all this stuff. Has anybody ever heard or had a friend or, you know, whatever said, like, those stupid developers, like security people? Do we have? This is, you're like, that's me. Okay, well. There's rehab available for you. We're gonna help you. So, okay, you know, I think that's about right. Okay, well, okay, who's ever said this about security, right? Like, security prefers a system powered off and unplugged. Anybody ever heard that? Right? No? Something like that. And it doesn't have to be word for word. I know engineers are very precise, right? Something like this. Basically, like security, you care nothing about like our actual world that we live in the business. That you don't care if we go bankrupt. What you want is just like things to be like so locked down that we can't do anything. Everybody heard of that? Okay, all the hands go up, right? It's like, and that's the problem. Like we have warring factions, and we have people that are totally misunderstanding each other. The developers are not stupid. They're some of the smartest people you ever meet. They're generally the people that actually went to school for the thing that they're doing in their real life, which is not true about most security people. Security people aren't completely disconnected from reality. They want to operate safely. To suggest that they would just like rather shut off a machine, like it's like no. Hopefully they actually have some desire to do computing. You know, it's like it's just like they want to do it the right way. And I see like this. There's a complete cultural unrest between these two groups in most organizations. Part of it comes from we've staffed our security people around compliance and all that stuff and legal things, and so you know, I mean that's part of it. I think that you can't fight it. And then there's this really great book called The Tangled Web, which is all about browser security. But the first chapter has this great little history of computing and kind of where we've come from in InfoSec and application security. Let me read this to you. Risk assessment introduces a dangerous fallacy that structured inadequacy is almost as good as adequacy, and that underfunded security efforts plus risk management are about as good as properly funded security work. Does that bother anybody in the crowd? Could we raise our hands if it bothers you? 4 people. Okay. Why does it not bother everybody? Like, it should like I would say like this should be really a problem. All right, we'll try it again. Who else is bothered by this? Okay, a few more. Peer pressure. Okay, let's break it down. What are we saying here? We're saying that basically we don't have to do engineering. We just do actuarial science stuff. You know, buy some insurance policies, and we're good. Like we'll go to the golf course or whatever it is we want to do. Go play video games, and that's like. That's a complete abdication of responsibility. It's like a complete break from engineering, and it's a really dangerous way to think about your job. And guess what? Like the world is like not going to be okay with that, especially as they figure out that like this is what we're doing. It's like, yeah, we still need the insurance. You still need some stuff to make sure that you're not completely like hosed. Like you got to have the lawyers, but like here we're just saying like lawyers, that's your problem now, right? Like that's no good. Like that is really horrible, and it really should bother you. And when I read that, I was like, man, that really upsets me. Like that really upsets me that the industry that I really care a lot about, like that this is the path that we chose to take, like in the mid '90s, and we stopped like doing the hardcore crypto algos, and we started like, oh, well, like if we give this rating and vector and whatever, and like we'll accept that risk, and we'll just pay somebody, I don't know, $1,000 for our insurance policy for that, right? Now we're finding out all those actuarial tables are completely fake, and like we just totally messed all that up, and people don't want to insure you for anything nowadays, and everybody is liable, and even like PCI is like, I don't know if anybody's has had to do the recent PCI 3 is like, it's like, you basically attest like, I am completely responsible for all my problems, and like, here's this 250-page document to say so, and then whenever you get breached, like PCI can be like, well, they didn't do all those things in the 250-page document, even though they said they were, and so it's not our problem, it's their problem. So like, it's just a complete transition of responsibility to you. And so, we're going to find ourselves like waking up to that. And I think, I could have had like endless slides of all the hacks that have happened over the last, 5 years, and about like how companies been breached and all the problems. But and we all know like that stuff's not going to get insured. I don't know if you're in Nick Galbraith's talk, he talks about how like the insurance companies, like the insurance and the way we're like putting money to that stuff is like really a reduction in money that's going into actual our pockets. So. But I make this claim that where ops was 5-7 years ago, and I believe that these ratios are also true. That like you have 100 developers, you have 10 operations, and you have like 1 security person. And these are order of magnitude, and these have been all gained by like my conversations with friends and some research and some studying. But like, does anybody say like these numbers are like completely wrong? If you do, you come tell me later. But like these numbers like are pretty much line up with how we work. And so the 10 to 1 like is a problem, but the 100 to 1 like that's a real problem. And so I think that what we have to accept as from the security side, you have to accept that no one thinks inside of your organization that the security group can actually help the business in a meaningful, substantial way, other than kind of like getting compliance or getting some certifications or whatever, right? Like they actually have sort of like pushed security to the side. And I think ops felt a lot of that same pressure. But DevOps changed that for operations, and I believe that security can also change too. I think we see patterns of how this is already rolling out in the world. Like look at the Chaos Monkey from Netflix, right? Like that is wildly successful. People like quote it all the time. People love it. But they demonstrated something really important, that average people like care about resiliency. Like people all the way from the C level all the way down to engineering to like everybody can grok like what's going on with Chaos Monkey. And like I think Chaos Monkey started as like a really simple bash script that just like deleted instances, right? And I think it's still essentially the same thing today. It's not rocket science, but it was a proof that like the stuff we're building needs to be resilient to handle like just a simple thing like that happening. And I think that it speaks even deeper like the human side of stuff. Like we all care. Like I love that like I buy Texas Tough bags. Like I mean, you don't buy like Vermont Strong bags or whatever. It's like we're in Texas, man. Like even the plastic bags are like tougher than things you would get out of state. It's like that. And when you're it's like you go to HEB. And when I go out of state, it's like people are like, "What's HEB?" You're like, "Oh, it's the greatest grocery store ever." But all right, so you go to HEB and you're like there's like Ziploc, right? It's like very low. It's like, but HEB is like Texas Tough. You're like, I will take the Texas. They'll kick me out if I don't buy the Texas Tough brand, right? But I think it's a statement of like, we all really care about that. And like, there's that whole like rugged concept that like that's built into us for being here in Texas and kind of like, kind of shaping the land as we developed it. But about 10 years or 5 years ago or 6 years ago. The rugged software movement happened, and Josh Corman and Jeff Williams, both here, along with David Rice, sort of came up with the Rugged Software Manifesto. We also have Rugged DevOps. There's some other movements like DevOps Sec and Sec DevOps and DevSecOps, but DevOps people don't like when you add things to the DevOps thing, just an aside, but they seem passable with rugged DevOps at the moment, but we'll see. The point is, like, rugged and DevOps are both saying the same things, and like we're just kind of coming from a little bit different angles, but like we're trying to bring security in the fold of DevOps. There's a couple good talks that if you could kind of check this out, if you get the slides, it'd be worth watching these videos. But there's how they do it at Twitter, how they did it over at Etsy, and then security's way forward is really to help out like both the development side and the operations side. And I think that's where we need to start. So let's review kind of some of the security things that we've done over the last few years, and talk about them. Okay, one bad idea is like we had applications can be defended because, you know, web app firewalls suck. So let's do developer training, right? Accepted premise by the audience. That was our idea. So we taught everybody like, here's cross-site scripting and here's SQL injection and you know, OWASP top 10, learn that stuff, right? And oh, and then all those people like found better jobs somewhere else, right? And so they're like, oh, sweet, now I'm knowledgeable and more employable. But we actually did this weird thing. Like for some reason, we had this entry point on the outside looking at what's going on, and then we abandoned actually knowing anything useful about the runtime and just went straight all the way to the other side to development, which I think is kind of weird, right? But instead, like, what if we started adding defense based on the behaviors that we do, behaviors that we see, actions that are actually going on, attacks that are actually going on? Like, I think there's some useful ways to do that. I have some ideas for how to do that with some logging. Another bad idea, developers can't figure it out, so let's scan for vulnerabilities instead. It kind of comes from the whole developers are stupid, so we're just gonna like, we'll roll this ourselves. And so then like the pen tester's like, peace, man, here's your PDF, and like, you know, walks away, right? And the developer's like, oh, okay. You should always just say like, I'd like a Python script, or I don't know, I'll talk about Gauntlet later, you could get a Gauntlet test, or, you know, it's like, I want something that like I can actually run in my pipeline, and I don't want like a big PDF. Like that's gonna be the outcome of the engagement. That's a little tip on when you engage with those guys. But even with an emphasis on AppSec training, we still sort of made things kind of a dark art, and it's like back to like running scanners and doing all this stuff that like, you know, doesn't really speak the language of developers. But really we should have integrated rugged testing inside of the pipeline. All right, another idea that we have is we had an alignment to vulnerability scanning, but then the tendency there is to kind of fix the easy stuff. And I think that's, I mean, I can't say any better than this. This is really great. Okay. But we still don't know what's actually happening. We don't know who's attacking, where they're coming from, what's going on, and we've sort of kept that out. The real threats go unknown. People that are writing the code have no idea like how it's being used in runtime. Like, and we've seen in the performance world, like that is completely shifted. Like operations is like, oh sweet, here's this thing called New Relic, or here's this thing, whatever APM tool or whatever monitoring stuff, and like we now, instead of those alerts, you know, kind of getting buried in like the sysadmins, like, you know, 1,000 emails for the morning when they come in, like those things actually go like to the people who wrote the code. Like novel idea, right? It took us a while to get there in operations. We're still not there with security, but we should do that. We should have some sort of way to communicate back like what's actually happening. Even if it's not a full picture, like there needs to be some sort of visibility there. Okay, so another idea, let's put in tooling that no one outside of security can understand. We usually do this in the name of compliance, and maybe we were like, okay, yeah, we're still going to get that WAF, right? And so we're gonna get a web app firewall because, you know, PCI says we have to, and then we get it, and we're like, yes, oh no, okay, all right. That's like the funniest video I got, so sorry. All right, so when you were faced with that and you were compliance oriented, either as a security person you went, all right, I'm going to go with the smallest possible thing that just like gets me checkbox, right? Which is like, I already got a caching CDN thing, something right over there, so I'm going to go ahead and put like mod security rule set on there, and we're going to call it good, right? And just sort of like, you know, meet the lowest thing. Or you chose the righteous path, and you said, I will put in an appliance that will block all the things, and then no one is like hanging out with you, and it's like no one answers your IMs or whatever. You're like, what's going on here? Your Slack channel is very empty. And here's a white paper from a WAF vendor. It says, every aspect of managing WAFs is an ongoing process. This is the antithesis of set it and forget it technology. That's the real point of this research, to maximize value from your WAF. You need to go in with everyone's eyes open when the effort required to get and keep the WAF running productively. And it feels really crazy. You're like, who's actually going to take care of like the business? Like now you're hiring, like you're putting in the technology, but then you're also like adding in extra people to maintain that. And these kids are cool, right? All right, I just realized that I'm running a little long, so we're going to pick up the speed here. So we have two ways we can add in value. We talked about that. Like we can add value to devs or ops, and then we're going to just like hope someone in the business notices. We can make some sort of like change that would just like really move us. And you know what? Ops did it. Security can do it too. Like it's not like just this dream. It's really a true thing. So start automating those security tools. Like practice bad behavior development, putting things that attack your site inside of the build pipeline. I wrote this tool called Gauntlet. Gauntlet is is built for bad behavior driven development. It's open source. It comes with a bunch of steps that hook attack tools, but it doesn't install any tools, and it can be a good citizen inside of your continuous integration pipeline. The way Gauntlet works in my really slick animated, well, it's not even animated really, but really slick design here is you put your code in and like different things start attacking it. Oh, there's the animation, and then it comes out the other side, and you're like, sweet, you know, like the code survived like the bare minimum of like just scanners, off-the-shelf scanners being like run against it, and it came out without any problems. Like, we're not saying it's perfect. We're not saying you don't need to do pen testing. We're not saying that like still good code rigor and all that stuff doesn't need to still happen, but you've actually raised the visibility of what's going on with your application when people are writing code, and it's a really compelling thing. A little more about Gauntlet. If you're interested, it uses Cucumber. It basically searches wherever it's currently at and looks for anything with a .attack file. This is what a .attack file looks like. It's very similar to Cucumber or any of the behavior-driven development stuff if you're used to that. But you have a background step, like I have the stuff installed that I need, like Nmap here. I have a host, whatever I want. And then when I launch the attack, then I do this thing, right? So like the security professional or whoever knows how to run the tool kind of puts the special switches and stuff. That business goes right in here, right? And then the output should expect this. I think everybody could read that and understand it. The idea is you're taking the wisdom and the knowledge that's set in the mind of the one person in that 110.1 scenario. You're taking that and you're able to federate that and distribute that to everybody else. And you limit it to like one or maybe two lines of actual things. And then everything else is like readable by a developer, by operations, or by security. Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, so here's an example of cross-site scripting, not Nmap. But here, look, I'm looking for cross-site scripting. Hey, using a tool like we should not find cross-site scripting on this page. Oh, look, we didn't find it. And that's a simple, really short statement on that. I gave a 2.5-hour presentation and workshop on this, which I'm trying to convert into the hands-on Gauntlet book. But that is available here. And if you're interested, like let me know and I can reach out to you and show you. If you're interested in getting started with it, there's the Gauntlet demo, which you clone this repo. It's actually running inside of Travis itself, running against itself already. It has a Python and I think it has Gruyere and Rails Goat plugged into it. We have the Gauntlet starter kit, which will configure you a VM and chefs it all up and puts everything on the box. And I wanted to have it done by today, but hopefully by early next week. But I have Gauntlet in Dockers, which it's not rocket science either, but like I'm going to go ahead and put that up on the site as well. Just running the conference got me a little behind schedule. So then if you want the book, it's on LeanPub. Okay, then do that same thing, but now instead of just running them locally or whatever, put it inside your CI system. And so this is all from the Gauntlet demo repo, but it's already hooked inside of Travis, which is a software as a service CI system, but it would also work in Jenkins. I have this working in Jenkins as well. In fact, Gareth and I did a presentation of Velocity with how to do this with Jenkins, how to do it in Travis. We did Python, Rails, and we also hooked other stuff in like code signing, virus scanning, dependency checking, static analysis, and dynamic analysis using Zap and other tools like that, and Gauntlet in this session. And so if you're interested in that as well, I could be happy to point you in the right direction on that. Oh, so then another one is add some sort of application security telemetry or monitoring, to developers and operations, and do that feedback loop and help increase that. So if you're already grabbing your logs, turn your log stash stuff into stats-D metrics. So every time you see things that look like cross-site scripting, or they're coming from scanners, or they're coming from some source that you don't trust, like a Tor network or whatever, pump that into a metric and then start working on building that out. You basically want to work on like runtime correlation between things like biz, ops, dev, sec, things like SQL injection plus 500s, or maybe like we're seeing a lot of login spikes or login failures or whatever it is that makes sense to your business but help do all that. This is what we do at Signal Sciences. I won't pitch that, but another pro tip is get hugs from the auditors and harden and do audit config management. You want to have, there's an open source audit hardening framework that has Chef, Puppet, and Ansible recipes already ready, and it already kind of applies the good standards over at hardening.io. Oh, oops, I'm ahead of slide. Over at hardening.io. And you can run nightly audits of it. And so when it's time to do like compliance, you're like, sweet, we're like compliant, like not just today because we checked the hardening thing. Like I have like the last 365 days of audit records showing like how we were doing this. And your auditors will be like, sweet, this is awesome, like easiest assessment we've ever done. If you're running Amazon, I like ThreatStack, I think they're really up and coming and a really good player in that space as well. So try to reverse the trend, add value to devs, add value to ops, and try to figure out like ways you can do that in the pipeline. Remember, this is our summary, so I think that we're still trying to figure out what we're doing in software development, and that's okay, like everybody is. But we can no longer foster this silo type thinking that we've been doing in security for all these years. We can find a path, just like ops did. Let's see, and yeah, try to focus on adding value at those different places. And here's a couple practices that we talked about, but the slides again are at this link. So I know we're short on time, but anybody have any questions? I could try to answer one or two if you have one. No? All right. Thanks.